I was home alone quite a lot due to my mum working night shifts and my dad working away quite a lot. I was also a bit addicted to scary programs and would find myself binging on them until the early hours. I would leave both the front door and back door unlocked, but my back door was downstairs. I lived in a 3-story house. Also downstairs, it wasn't decorated at all. In fact, it was pure brick, very cold, and nothing was nice about it during the day. At night, I would avoid it altogether. On this night though, I settled down for the show, and I would hear the typical noises you would hear from your house when things started to calm down. I could feel an adrenaline rush as I felt vulnerable. I know how stupid that sounds. I also realised how stupid I was this night when I heard something from down the stairs. It was like a clicking sound with soft tapping. I muted the TV, stood at the top of the stairs and continued to listen. The sounds continued. The light wasn't working either, and so I bravely walked down the stairs into the darkness. The steps creaked, and I could feel the cold on my skin as the sound stopped. I reached the bottom and could see one of my bathrooms. It was never used as it was too cold with no heating and still not decorated. I could also see the washing machine next to it. I stepped around the stairs and there was the back room where the back door sat. They were French doors, and so as I peeked through the door gap, I saw an eye staring back at me. I jumped and screamed and sprinted back up the stairs. I ran as fast as I could out the front door and to my neighbours. I pounded on their door until they answered. The man never showed an appearance, and the neighbours finally answered. We dialed 999 and the police were quick to respond. My mum also returned home and dealt with the police for me. They had told her to stay with a friend that night, but the neighbour was adamant we stayed with them until the back door was safe and secure again. Sadly, we stayed in the house for a few more months before we finally moved away. I'm not so much of an adrenaline junkie no more. I know this is supposed to be a Home Alone story, and it started out as one, but my sister had come back home around midnight. We were pretty close, but she was in her bedroom on this night, and I was down in the basement playing on my PlayStation. I usually have my headphones in, especially when playing Call of Duty, but tonight I really wasn't in the mood. I had heard what I thought to be knocking at the front door around 10 PM. I went to check, and nobody was there, so I just assumed I was hearing things. It was now past midnight. My parents were away for a mini weekend break, and so being the oldest, I was now the man of the house. I died in the game and thought it would be a brotherly thing to stretch my legs and see what my sister was up to. I had to climb 2 sets of stairs to get to her room, only to find out she wasn't home. Nice of her to let me know she went back out. Just to say, I am 24 and my sister is 21. She tends to go out whenever she feels like it, so long as she lets someone know. On this occasion though, she didn't. I went back to my game and continued playing. Time really does pass by so quickly when you're having fun. In the basement we have little windows spread across the upper part of the wall to level off the grass outside, and as I stretched in my chair, I saw someone staring at me through the window. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I froze in my stretched position as I watched this old man staring right at me. I got up and asked what he wanted, but he just stared at me for a few seconds more before standing up and walking away. I waited for about an hour, pacing around the house making sure he was gone and I can go to bed. I locked all the windows and doors, making sure everything was switched off, and then headed up to bed. My sister texted me saying she forgot to let me know she went back out and now she'd be back home in the morning. I didn't think to tell her about this old man. I just lie down in bed and listen to rain sounds to help me sleep. You know that feeling you have when you think you've been asleep but you aren't really sure? That's how I felt. I sat up in bed. I can hear knocking from my window. It was my bedroom window. I froze. The curtains were closed so they couldn't see in, but I could see a shadow against the curtains due to the streetlight outside. I got up from my bed, crept over to the window and peeked through the edge of the curtain. It was the old man again. But this time his face was pressed up against the window as if ready to frighten me when I opened the curtains to check who it was. He had no idea I could see through the side of the curtain. It made me jump a little, but time was of the essence. I grabbed hold of my phone and called the cops. I said there was a man right outside my bedroom window and they told me to sit still and someone would be right over. I must have waited around 10 minutes with the old man continuously knocking the window, growing louder as time went on. He must not have been right in the head as he didn't move from the window. It was like he was determined to scare me. Thankfully, the police turned up and arrested him. I went outside and watched as he got put into the back of the police car. I never bothered to follow her up, and for a few nights I remained proactive in making sure everything was safe and secure, even telling my parents about what happened when they got back. But nothing more came of this. I look forward to the times when I am home alone. I get grief off my family quite a lot, and so this really is my downtime. Sadly, we had moved to a new area, and this area had a reputation for break-ins. We didn't have money, and this area was better than where we previously lived, so I wasn't really complaining. After living here for a few months, nothing ever happened. We heard about random things happening locally, like cars being stolen, muggings, break-ins, but that was all word of mouth. I don't think anyone in my street had seen anything bad happen in person. That was about to change for myself though. My family went to the movies and out for a meal. It was their anniversary, so I took it upon myself to have a bath, chuck the fireplace on, and wrap myself up warm to settle in for the night. I forgot to mention that I am a young woman, 20 years old, and not your typical girly girl. I was brought up doing self-defense, so I was very confident in being able to deal with multiple situations if they were to arise. It was getting late now though. I noticed on the clock that sat above the fireplace that it was just past 11 when my phone rang. I had to reach over the other end of the sofa to grab hold of it. It was my parents. My mum was telling me that they were having a good night and so decided to stay out for the night. She asked if I was okay and if I needed anything before we hung up, and I was back relaxing again. Bliss, I thought to myself. My eyes were closed, my feet were up, and I heard a thud. But you know those kind of thuds you just can't pinpoint? Well, that was what I heard. I listened for a few more seconds before closing my eyes again, lying down and relaxing. I was tired, and I knew I had to get up. I stretched as I stood, looked out the front window to see some people in the street looking up. It looked as if they were looking at my house, but I couldn't be sure. I could just see them staring up. One of them looked down at me before I just walked off. That was weird. I closed the blinds, locked the front door and back door, then headed off to bed. I loved having my window open as I was getting myself ready for bed, as I slept very well in the cold bedroom. My window was already open though when I entered my room. I wasn't sure if I had left it open by mistake, but I wasn't complaining as my room was now cold. It was the kind of cold I really did prefer. It was the end of winter, so the weather was still chilly. I closed my window, and now there was only one person in the street still looking up. I opened the window back up and asked if I could help them with something. They stood for a few seconds before saying that I wasn't alone. What? I was so confused. They weren't making much sense, and they spoke so softly it was difficult to hear. But as I said, the neighborhood wasn't the best, so I waited for them to say something more, but they didn't. I closed the window and the blinds and jumped into bed, texting my mum and dad a good night. A few hours later though, I could hear breathing right beside me. I felt a hand touch my hair as I very slowly awoke. I never opened my eyes though. I was aware someone else was in my room before opening my eyes, so I continued pretending to be asleep. I listened to this person breathing, whispering words I couldn't really understand, and then getting up, closing my cupboard doors. I opened my eyes cautiously and looked around without moving my head first of all. I couldn't see anything. I pretended to naturally wake up with my arms stretching a few minutes later, making it look like I needed to go for a pee. I wasn't sure where the person was, and so carefully maneuvered around my bed and stumbled into my cupboard as if I was still waking up and just tripped. I heard what I now knew to be a woman in the closet. I acted fast. As soon as I was out of sight, there was an umbrella on the landing and I quickly grabbed it, shoving it through the door handles, trapping her inside as I quickly ran to grab my phone. She was screaming and pounding at the doors, trying to get out. I knew the umbrella wasn't going to hold. I ran downstairs calling the police, and out my front door they quickly arrived. I was talking within a few minutes and rushed inside. I had told them I locked her in the closet with an umbrella and she was surprisingly still inside. There was some commotion as I could hear the woman screaming at them. From what I was told by a family friend who was a police officer, the woman was slashing a knife at the officers before one of them was able to pin her to the ground, arresting her. I didn't see the woman come out. I was on the phone to my mum, who quickly came home that same night. We stayed with a family friend for a few nights, and next time I see people staring at my window, if not a bit weirdly, I will pay it full attention.